fanfare, man.
Marble fanfare?
Marble fanfare. It's cold in here.
It's very cold in there.
We're gonna warm it up.
This is an Iceman theme panel. I'll visit.
We gotta warm it up.
Yeah, there's maybe a magma theme panel.
You know what? Nothing warms up a room better than applause.
Yeah. There you go. A good start. Okay, thank you everybody. This is the X-Men retrospective panel here at Comic-Con Revolution. My name is Chris Arrant. I'm the editor of Newsarama, one of the longest running sites about comics. But I know you're not here for me, you're here for these three guys here. I could introduce you and give you their bio, but I'd like for them to say who they are, their booth numbers, and kind of what your favorite X-Men work is so far. Because I know some of you are still working on some new X-Men stuff. Whilce, do you want to start first?
My name is Whilce Portacio, and I don't know my table number. I just work there.
He's 2 rows up from me.
There you go. And X-Men, of course, it's got to be the rolling out of Bishop.
Yeah. Whilce created Bishop, classic character, and he's currently working on a major X book with Rob Liefeld, which everybody should check out.
My name's Steve Gordon. I guess I represent the animation side of X-Men here. I was character designer and one of the directors on X-Men Evolution. I also worked on Wolverine and the X-Men. I'm at table E1 in Artist Alley.
Art?
Yes, last but not least. Art Thibert, and I've been working for 35 years in the comics industry, mostly as an inker. I've worked with Whilce Portacio on the X-Books. What was it, X Factor we started? And then we did Uncanny. And then, of course, Whilce created Bishop and made history. So my favorite runs would probably be the stuff with Whilce, Jim Lee, and Carlos Pacheco on X-Men. So
You inked a Bishop series with George's Genante.
Yes.
Bishop's last X-Men.
that's true. Yeah, I think on and off, I've probably put about 15 years in that office.
Yeah.
Yeah, working on various X projects. I also penciled and inked a little series called Cable
Yeah.
with Fabian Nicieza as the writer.
Yeah. You were that's one of the earliest Cable stories that really explored his backstory right after he was introduced. And I believe you had Cable with a goatee. Is that right?
Yeah, he had the goatee and the shaved sides. Yeah, cool.
Okay. So we're here today to talk about X-Men. Like these people are doing X-Men currently or have done them in the past. I have a lot of questions, but because we have people out here, I don't want to hog up all the time. So if anybody has a question that they have before I get started, I will allow that. If you have a question, you just raise your hand and I'll point to you. And otherwise, I'll just take over. Any questions for anybody before I start? Yes, sir.
This is for Steve. Since you're director for X-Men Evolution, have you met any of the cast members since they're from Canada?
I've met a couple at cons. That's about as far as it goes. Most of them, because they're Canadian and Vancouver and stuff, we recorded them remotely. We spoke, but haven't really met.
Yeah, that's a unique thing that probably shared with comics, where it's mostly done from home, and the creators meet each other at conventions.
Yeah,
They don't really hang out.
Well, we were all at different studios. We were working in a studio, and they went into a studio to record, but it was done through a high-speed network, so we could hear true voice sound and stuff. So the reason why we went up with that particular show up to Canada was due to cost.
like people are here because they're fans of X-Men, but how did each of you become fans of X-Men before you became creators and authors on like X-Men? Art, did you want to start?
I remember the early Neil Adams X-Men run. So the one that stood out for me was the battle between Cyclops and Havoc when they were brothers. You know, that's the first time I really remember those two characters really being, like, getting in the backstory and in their history. And then there was the one story where I think it was Trask with the Sentinels, and that was, I was hooked after that. And then of course the giant size X-Men,
Oh, yes.
you know, with Cockrum and those. Yeah, those were amazing.
For me, I first read X-Men back in the original days with Kirby and Stan Lee, and to tell you the truth, after that, I kind of lost track of them, and it wasn't until I was hired to work on X-Men Evolution that I had to dive back in. So it was all kind of fresh and new to me at that point, and to find out who everyone was.
I'm going to come back to that in a second. That's pretty interesting. I got a follow up for that. But Whilce, what was your first?
I didn't. I was too young to read and buy the original X-Men, but I was introduced to the X-Men through them. Remember there was those compilation books of some of the old superheroes. One of them, there was a sequel called Son of Something. You know.
Yes.
What was it called? Do you remember? I mean, the first edition had like a lot of the number ones.
I think it's like Marvel Saga or something Stan Lee.
Yeah, it was a compilation. So there was the first X-Men there, and so when you say to me first class, that's what it is. It's Bobby G, you know, Cyclops and Hank and Warren. And if you follow my career then in the X books, I did just about every X book with Art, right? We did just about every book. And I don't know if you noticed, Art, but every time editorial switched team to another team, I asked to go to that book. And that's what we were doing. We were following the original class to their books. Yeah. So I just stayed with them. I mean, Wolverine was coming up when I was doing that. That was, you know, when he was really blowing. I mean, he was really getting really huge. But I just was enamored with that first class.
But the first time you worked on an X-Men, he wasn't even an X-Men at the time, but you inked the long shot book with amazing inks over Art.
Tell how
Adams.
you inked it with.
Yeah, one of Whilce's first work before he was a penciler is he was an inker for Art Adams.
Didn't you ink that with a rapidograph?
Well, the real remarkable thing was that, you know, I say a lot of what we did back then, and it really is true to a lot of degree. We were young and dumb, you know. I mean, seriously, right? I mean, when we got into the industry, it wasn't even considered a job. I mean, you had to have read comics to go hunting and say, hey, actually, can we actually do this? You know, and we didn't really get paid too much. Nobody was paying attention to us. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd bring my Spider-Man checks to the bank. You know, I was a young, 20, 21 years old, and bring it to the pretty teller, and she'd just laugh at me, you know, how cute, you know. Now today, it's gotten so big that, you bring your Spider-Man checks, and, the teller wants you to meet the manager now, and they're asking for San Diego tickets, you know. But back then, oh, yeah, when you guys email your things in, you're going directly.
Yeah, we'll also get you all into San Diego Comic-Con.
No, but actually, seriously, I mean, a lot of the people now, there's a lot of people that have already shifted out of upstairs, quote unquote, in San Diego. But for a long time, they were all the old people from way back. I mean, we've been going about more than 30 years in San Diego, right?
35 for me.
Yeah. So,
I remember that Artist Alley that one year.
oh, I remember Art almost got kicked out one year. Remember when we were at the Omni? Him and his buddies went to the roof. I guess you were drunk, huh?
No.
But he went on the roof and they took down all of the flags off of the roof, and security got him.
We had Jim Lee there. I have photographic proof of this event. You stayed back, though. You and Scott stayed back.
I was always proud.
This is a little reveal. We used to, at Artist Alley, we would have glasses like this, and we would bring coolers, and we would just kind of be boozing it up right there in Artist Alley. And I'll tell you, we made a lot of friends that year, because we had like Kevin McGuire, like a bunch of people that were just kind of starting off, and we just like kind of slide the beer underneath the table, and we just kind of be dropping them back. And yeah, by the end of the evening, we had quite a little entourage following us around. Yeah.
Now the liquid in here is just water, so don't start.
Except for this one, this is vodka.
So,
But to answer your question real quick, back in the day when I first got in, I handed in the wrong portfolio. They said, no pinups, no watercolors, no paintings, just strict storytelling stuff.
Yeah.
I had no storytelling stuff. So Carl Potts was the editor of Punisher at the time, one of the senior editors. He was really good, and instead of just saying, hey, come back next year, kid, he not only gave me the teaching tool at the time, the 5 C's of cinematography, this book about filming, but it was a good standard book for storytelling. He not only gave me that, but then he goes, hey, Ann Newsarama, the current X-Men editor, she's writing a book that this new guy Art's going to do, and hey, you want to earn some money by at least ink it. And so I inked that while I was studying the 5 C's, and then after I got that, then I passed the storytelling test and got Punisher after that.
Yeah, Carl Potts was amazing.
He was the last.
I still have Xeroxes of Carl Potts went over one of my first ink jobs at Marvel, and he took a red marker, and so I could get a better rate at Marvel, he went over the entire page and then had me redo the page, and then I turned it back in and I got a higher page rate based on his notes and everything. Yeah,
He was the last one that would actually do that.
Mentor.
You got you got me, you got Jim Lee.
yeah.
I mean, he got just about all of the.
Yeah, before Jim Lee was X-Men, Jim Lee was Punisher.
Yeah.
Before that, he was Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
I inked that. Yeah, right.
That was
Remember that cover?
the Flag San Diego year.
Yeah, no, actually, that was the year that Marvel sent all of the editors to San Diego, specifically looking for new talent.
I think that was before San Diego was San Diego.
Oh no, this was like at the Civic Center.
Yeah, this was the Civic Center. Yeah.
So Steve, how did you get on board to start animating the X-Men? Was it a phone call? Were you campaigning for the gig, or how did that come about?
I've been in animation for years before that, and a friend of mine became the producer. He decided to be the producer. He was looking for directors, and he hired me to be a director, and along with several other people. And we were in development. As we were trying to develop it, we didn't hire a character designer, and I ended up just being a character designer, just like what I was doing with it. So it kind of through default.
So going back to what you were saying, how you were a fan of the original, and you kind of stepped away. And then when you got this job, you came back. So what was it like to come back and there'd be 100, 200 issues, not just the main title, but by that time there was X Factor, there was New Mutants. So how was that for you as a fan to come back and there's so much reading?
Oh yeah, I had to immerse myself pretty quick. I didn't even know who Wolverine was. So it was a lot of research and stuff. I was just slightly familiar with the 90s cartoon, because at one point they've been talking to me about redesigning those characters so they'd be easier to animate. But that show got canceled before that happened. So I was vaguely familiar with them a little bit. I knew that there was some girl who looked like Dolly Parton and talked like her, and I knew there was someone who I thought, well, maybe this is some new version of the Beast with claws or something. I had no idea, so I had to quickly get deeply into it. And we had some Bible written, which is what they call the original premise in animation, that kind of laid out a lot of the ideas and thoughts and characters they wanted to use, and we kind of picked and chose from that. But it was a lot of work. Thankfully, we had a few months before we had to get too deep into it, so I could kind of research it and stuff. And the other people on the crew were more immersed in it than I was, so I was able to lean on them a lot more.
Art, what was your first X-Men job?
This is, I think I inked Terry Shoemaker on an annual or something. And then shortly after that, man, you talk about being thrown in the deep end, just like Whilce, I started inking Art Adams on the X-Men annual.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Historic.
Yeah. And it was weird, it's like you were talking about how things kind of cross over. I was inking Walter Simonson on Fantastic Four, and I was doing finishes on Dan Jurgens all the same month. Yeah.
Drastically.
Drastic difference in styles and just a lot of work. But I was, like you said, dumb and hungry, you know. So you don't know any better, right? You just do it. Yeah.
No, and it paid out. I mean, we took the ride and let us still doing it.
And you've also contributed to the pantheon of characters. Whilce, can you talk about the creation of Bishop and Fitzroy? Like, I love Trevor Fitzroy character. Like, can you talk about just the creation of that, and kind of, did you ask if you could create a new character? Did they come to you saying, hey, we need somebody, what do you got? Like, how did that come about for Bishop?
Well, one thing that everybody's got to remember, that comics, as much as, you know, Art and I have had good times, it's a 4-week process. You know, that's not a lot of time. I mean, and I'll show you an example of, you know, being young and dumb and just, you know, jumping to prove that, you know, I could do it. It was 281. It was the launch of the 2 new big books. We labeled, you know, we labeled it Big, Huge, New, Bad World. So we needed 2 X-Men books.
It was a blue team and a gold team.
Yeah. So my issue was Uncanny 281. And so I'm just beginning to, I think I was in week 1 or week 2 of it. And again, it's 4 weeks. Bob Harris calls up and he says, he's the editor, calls up from New York and he says, hey, your team has most of the original people, but there's Wolverine and Storm on the other side. And so they think your team is underpowered. So can you create a new X-Men? And I go, of course, right? Never did it before, but you know, of course. And he goes, just make him cool. And you got 2 weeks.
No pressure.
Yeah, 2 weeks while I'm doing this premiere new, you know, first issue. And so 2 weeks later, I call up Bob and I make him the pitch. And he says, yeah, and the next issue I put him in there. That's it. I mean, because again, it's a 4-week process. I mean, you know about deadlines. I mean, you don't have the luxury of going, maybe, no. You go, okay, what's the problem? Okay, we'll solve it this way. Okay, let's go. You know, you just go. You know, and again, we were young and dumb.
And then you fix it next month. Any mistake you make, you just fix it next month.
That's what you sometimes see when characters first debut. Their costumes kind of change and evolve over time to get
Well,
streamlined.
see, you know, that's interesting. That's one of the differences from now to back then. The big difference today is, back then, nobody was really paying attention to us, except you guys, okay? What I mean, the comparative, I mean, today, you know, my grandma will bring up a comic book for me to sign for her friends, right? You know, but back then, grandma was going, is he still doing that silly, childish stuff right there? You know, nobody was paying attention to us. So when nobody's paying attention to you, if you can do the work, they let you go. They let you do stuff. You know, they let you go with the flow. And we were, again, young and dumb. We were kids too. So we knew what you guys wanted because that's what we wanted. And they let us do that, so we did it. And then we got there. And then the more that we showed that we could connect to you guys, the more they let us go.
I was just going to say that. I was like, the more popular it became, the more we got away with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Art, like you created a slew of new characters with Fabian in the first Cable miniseries. Like the Clan Chosen, which in continuity would be Cable's first team before X-Force or New Mutants even. So what was it, like, did you have to ask permission or fill out forms, or you and Fabian just creating characters?
We did have a little bit more lead time than I think you probably did, because you were, I remember you telling me this once, Whilce, you said, on X-Men. You said, we inherited a bad schedule. And I never heard anybody talk like that before. I was like, yeah, we did. Because the book was already behind by the time we got on the book. So what that means is that, you know, you're kind of 3 months ahead of schedule. So let's just say the book was, instead of 3 months, which is the optimal, it was like a week and a half from shipping. So when Whilce and I took over the book, it never really got any better. I think it was always about a week and a half from shipping, which means just about the time you finish the last page, it goes to press. Like it was that crazy. So on cable, the only backlash of that, or the problem with that, was it was a double-sized issue.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more work than I had been used to doing, because most of it was like 22 pages of work. So this was paced out in a lot different manner than I was used to. And so then we did have a little bit more time to develop the world and to develop the characters. So that wasn't as under duress as like Whilce's Bishop, but Hazard and some of the characters that were in like X-Men 12 and 13, those were like, you know, gun to head, you know, doing it very quickly, coming up with character designs, backstories, those type of things.
Yeah, Art brings up a question that I wanted to ask, like when Jim and Whilce were leaving to form Image, Marvel was looking for who to take up the books next, and Art was chosen to follow Jim with that next issue, which were friends with Jim, and you were in there doing a book, and you introduced new characters like Hazard. So what's it like in general, kind of taking the baton from the creators before you and basically being the next person to have the responsibility?
It was fairly nerve-wracking, but Bob was just like, Bob Harris, the editor, he just said, carry on. So I was already doing that anyway, and a lot of the later issues that Whilce and I did, and almost all the stuff I did on X-Men with Jim, were finishes.
Yes.
So I was already kind of finishing the book, so a lot of the style and the look was already, I was used to doing that anyway, so it was just actually kind of doing the breakdowns and then inking over that.
Yeah, that's what, finishes, it's when an artist does looser pencils, and it's usually they get someone that they can trust that will do, it's more than inking. They finish it, they tighten it up, and they kind of bring it into focus. And
so it's rendering and black placements usually.
Yeah, and a lot of that also comes from, and unfortunately, again, today, it doesn't happen as much. But back then, when you got on the book, until you totally screwed up, you could stay on the book as long as you wanted. You know, now they give you like 3 or 4 issues or something. But because we could stay on extended periods, like me and Art, we could get to know each other. So we could, you know, Art could say, oh, I love doing this thing, or I love doing that, like buildings or something, or cars or stuff like that. So you can go a little loose on that, you know, or, you know, he'll say, I have no idea how to do cars, so you got to do those tighter and stuff. So we could develop a shorthand, so that where we don't have to both fully do the work, and we could, because again, it's just that deadline. That's all it is. It's just the deadline.
Weren't some of you at the time sharing the same studio place here in California? Like not necessarily a YouTube, I believe. You and Jim.
Yeah, me,
maybe
Jim, and
Mark.
Scott were in one
Yes.
studio, but Art were actually, you were one of the guys who started like an ink cabal, right? You had assistants.
Yeah, so in the early days, I had Trevor Scott and Danny Mickey working with me, and the neat thing about I can't say enough. I've never said it. I've said it to Jim to his face, but I never said it to you to your face. Thank you so much, man. Will spent so much time with me inking and figuring out this technique, because there was this whole uplighting, like reflective light that became the style of the 90s, and there was a certain like hatch patterns and way of lighting that had never really been done before, and Whilce was doing this stuff, and it was kind of evolving as we went along. And I just remember you telling me, like, it's got to progress in a smooth manner and just giving me all kind of the ins and outs. And the neat thing is, I was in the South Bay in LA, the beach area. You guys were San Diego, but somehow, because we were young and dumb, I would end up driving down to San Diego and hanging out with them. And you had an apartment, right, that you guys were renting out. And so they had an apartment that they were working, so the living room, dining room area was all like a bullpen.
Yeah.
And so then I had my one room, you know, apartment right on the beach. And then I had a little, you were talking about it earlier, like little back room. It was a print shop, so I had the back room that I was renting out. So that's where, you know, Hatchback Studios was. And so Whilce, I remember some nights you'd come down and we'd try to bang out pages. And then me going, you know, south and doing the same, you know, with you guys. And
And again, this was
learned so
before
much.
Image, so I mean, it was all
Yeah.
set up already with the expos.
Yeah, and just to back up, there was, when we started, there was no comic book artists on the West Coast. There was animators, but there really were no comic book artists. So everything was all New York based. So just the fact that we found each other and it became like a really tight knit community. Even like Rob Liefeld, when I moved to Huntington Beach, he lived like 10 minutes, 20 minutes from me. So we would hang out at my apartment and draw comics as well. So, and then Mark Silvestri was up the street when I lived in South Bay in Malibu, and we used to hang out there as well.
Which was really new, because back then, for pages, you wanted to live in New York because you couldn't email pages.
Right.
Right.
You would want to, and sometimes you didn't even trust like FedEx to get those pages to there, because if FedEx loses the pages.
Do you predate FedEx?
No.
Oh, I
No,
do.
but see, I have fond memories of FedEx because this is California, and we're young and dumb again, right? Okay, and I'm a boy racer. I used to kid race as cars, but so 5 o'clock is the shut off for FedEx, but it's about 10, 15 miles from the studio, and so. We were young in them, so we would work until like 4:50, because the whole thing was, okay, so how fast can we get over there, or can we make the deadline? We always made a deadline because the girls over there at FedEx, they knew that every Friday, every few days we'd be over there. So they'd be they'd be locking the door, waiting for us to, drive into the, speed into the parking lot. But it was it was like this. I mean, people don't understand. Working is, especially on the animation side. There's so much work compared to our stuff. But both the same that there's so much work. There's no time for relaxing or goofing off and stuff. You're just working. And so that 10 minutes from 4:50 to 5 o'clock, that's like fun. That's like, because at the end of that, and I gave it to the FedEx lady, I got the night. You were off. It's no more work until the next morning. And
Do you remember what was it, TWA Next, and then there was Delta Dash?
Yeah.
Because there were times when
when
Whilce would go, here's the last page, and then you would ink it up and you do like the same, like 4 to 6 o'clock in the morning. But FedEx didn't deliver. For us, they had a cutoff time. And so I lived close to LAX, so we would drive, once again, like crazy maniacs to the airport, and we would personally hand them the page, they'd pack it up, and then Marvel, in New York City, would get it the next day.
Yeah, the
and
airlines
they
would have their
would
own
make
mail
shipping.
service.
Yeah, and remember there was that one period where we found couriers. They would drive their house, we could give them pages, and boom, they're off, and then 2 hours later, Art, did you get it?
Those books were down to the wire. When you were saying 5-10 minutes, 5-10 minutes could seem like 2-3 hours, because the amount of work and the amount of things that you could get done in that short period of time was astronomical. Pages that would come together last minute would just boggle your mind, some of the stuff that we were pulling off.
Steve, can you talk about how, you coming into it, you have an appreciation for the comic stories and the comics art, and you as a character designer are trying to adapt these so they can be animated. That must be pretty difficult. I know you respect art and like an artist, so.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, well, the main idea is, you know, we were all familiar on our show with the '90s show. We weren't very thrilled with repeating. We thought it was really ugly and didn't animate well. It was just visual noise and didn't allow the animate overseas, which is usually where the stuff gets animated. You do all this pre-production, storyboards, the designs and stuff here, and then you ship it overseas to animate. And they're getting paid by the scene, and they don't get paid until they finish a scene. It doesn't matter if the scene's got 100 characters and, you know, goes on for 5 minutes. They will not get paid until that scene is finished. So they're rushing as hard as they can to get it done. So what you want to do is create drawings, character designs that they can do easily.
Yeah.
And I've been an animator already probably at that point for 20 years myself, you know, doing the actual animation. So I knew what I felt comfortable animating. So that was the first goal, was to make sure that the designs were animatable, unlike the '90s show, which were just basically lifts from the comics.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing we wanted to do was to not follow the same characters. You reinvent the characters. Like, for instance, the biggest one in the beginning was Rogue. We didn't want to go through the Dolly Parton version of Rogue. The big hair and the big Southern Belle accent and whatnot. We thought that was silly and didn't fit at all in the type of show we wanted to do. So we wanted to aim for more of a realistic slant on it, especially since
Dolly Parton is a real person,
Oh,
she's a
sure.
real person, but she's a silly person.
Just kidding.
She's half fake.
Fair.
She admits she's a cartoon character.
Just giving you a hard
Yeah.
time.
It's all right. But we wanted to make it so that it was much more believable, so we decided to, in her case, make her goth, which was a very serious.
So you worked on both shows.
Mhm.
So you worked on X-Men Evolution and the original.
No, he worked on Wolverine.
I worked on X-Men Evolution
Okay.
and Wolverine and the X-Men,
Okay.
which is the show that came after Evolution.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously, for Rogue, we went goth, which was a look at that time, a high school look, and we also decided to go for trailer trash. Because we wanted to make her, it fit the type of power she was going to have, the type of crisis she was going to have in her character and stuff. So we did a lot of that. And we went back to the original slant on some of the characters, like Scott, we made tall and thin, instead of this humongous weightlifter that we became.
He's slim. No.
I mean, it was nicknamed in the original comics was Slim.
I thought the redesign on that Wolverine redesign was really amazing. And also, it made for great toys. I thought the toys, they really translated well into the toys.
I wanted to ask about X-23, who debuted in X-Men Evolution. Were you involved with that?
Yeah, I was the original designer.
Yeah.
I designed her originally. Craig Kyle was the creator of her. He was the producer at the time. And she was based on his fiance's niece. It was the original character. So, you know, I kept getting these photographs of his niece dressed up.
Yes. So she was original character, not from comics, created in the cartoon that went on to come to comics, become really popular. And for a time when, spoilers, Wolverine died, she became Wolverine for several years. These are great books then. So what do you think about creating something, like designing her in cartoons and seeing her have this long life outside? That's pretty rare. It's like her and Harley.
Yeah,
It's two
those
pictures.
are pretty much the only two that I can think of offhand. I mean, it was not something we expected at all. We had no clue that she was going to become popular. In fact, we weren't even sure it was a good idea.
Yeah, like I was kind of surprised that Marvel or whoever would allow new characters to be made and not just be just.
Yeah, you know, I'm not real clear as to why they went ahead with her. I think it was a mandate that they put her into the comics, and I don't think the Quesada and some of those were happy with her. I think that might explain some of her origin in the comics.
Yeah, but they came around. They came around.
No, they did, yes. I don't think they they were looking towards her being a hit though. I think they were just saying, fine, we'll go ahead, she's gonna be a prostitute instead. 'Cause that wasn't originally part of the,
I'm remembering if you don't mind, I was remembering one of the episodes, and I'd never seen this before. And I don't know if you called her Kitty Pryde or if you called her Shadow Cat or whatever.
she was both.
Yeah, and there was this car coming in, and then she just phased, and then she just phased right into the seat of the car. And I had never, ever seen anything like that. And then later in The Matrix 2 or whatever, they did, you know, that character that phased, but I'd never seen anything like that before, so that show was really, it was really good.
We did some innovative things
Yeah.
that are now part of canon. I mean, we were the ones who connected the dots between the Weapon X program and the Super Soldier program.
Yeah.
You know, there's things like that we kind of manipulated because mainly we didn't really know,
Yeah.
and we were just kind of shooting and putting it together.
Going back to what Will said, you didn't know any better, you were young, you just did it because you weren't asking permission.
Well, we weren't young, but we just didn't, we were young as far as the comics went, and they weren't keeping that close an eye on us. In fact, the only thing that Avi, who was in charge of Marvel at the time, was concerned about were the colors, that they each had their main colors on their characters. You know, like Shadowcat had to have some sort of powder blue, and Jean had to have some sort of green, you know, that type of thing. And Wolverine's hair. You know, he wanted to make sure that we had some sort of weird flip up going on with his hair. In fact, that's, if you look at the movie, that's what he had going on in the first X-Men movies. That's the only thing they would allow him to be involved in, was making sure Wolverine's hair was
Yeah.
real.
Perfectly done, perfectly cold.
But I did get rid of the mutton chops. We thought those were silly looking, so we got rid of the mutton chops. But,
I have a few more questions, but I don't want to hog all the time. Does anybody have any questions? Right there, sir.
I think part of what I love about the X-Men property, I think, is about how convoluted it is. It seems like when the staff changes, maybe not all the information's passed over, people do all the research. But it's kind of fun looking back and trying to draw the lines and figure it all out. I was wondering what you would consider, each one of you would consider the most convoluted or confusing aspect of the X-Men.
For those that didn't hear, he's trying to ask you what do they consider the most convoluted or complicated aspects of the X-Men? Like maybe there's something that you, I don't know, there's something you enjoy that like even though it's like convoluted or?
Well, for me, it's just, it goes down to the basic structure of comics, and one of those basic tenements, one of those basic laws is they really can't die, you know. So it's hard to, well, let me put it this way. Superman is a hard character to write or draw because he's perfect. So you can't put him in, it's hard to put him in the dilemma because everybody will go, yeah, right. You know, he's just perfect and super powerful. So you have to play around with that. But then, again, at the bottom line, you can't really do that. So our stories just keep going. That's the only thing that I come from a science fiction. Well, when I don't come from, I don't mean I write science fiction, but I got into all this creative fantasy stuff through reading science fiction novels back then. And those are about building the world, and then, okay, here are the rules of the world. Okay, now drop a story into that, and now pay attention to making sure you follow the rules. When I got into comics, I didn't know some of the basic tenements and stuff, so I just transposed some of that stuff, and which is why we got all the cyberpunk stuff, we got all the science stuff, we got all the time travel and stuff like that. It's just us playing around with that stuff. But then after a while, I started noticing that we really couldn't go anywhere personally with the characters and stuff. That's the only thing that I had some problems with later on, with the genre itself.
But you kind of connected, I believe you drew the X Factor issue where it was revealed that the baby that Cyclops had with Madeline turned out like Cable had been introduced separately, and you helped, you were there when they put that together and revealed that Cable was the baby.
I have to say that was wrong. Marie Callender, San Diego, X-Men, then Lunch with Bob, and Rob being Rob. You got to remember, Rob was Rob was the kid. Rob was the youngest of us all.
You had to have been 18, 19, maybe?
Yeah, I was like 20, 21, 22. And then just in the middle of lunch, Rob blurts out, Nathan is Cable. And there was a big long pause and everybody goes, okay. And then Bob starts assigning, okay, Whilce do the kidnapping, blah, blah, and then we start doing that stuff. But then, actually that goes into my point. So then we were assigned all these different things to do in our separate books to set up this whole thing of the baby going in Cable in the future and stuff like that. And then after we actually, I don't remember, after we did all that and it published, then Marvel said, don't tell anybody that Nathan is.
Yeah, they kind of downplayed it.
They never confirmed it for like years.
Yeah, we all knew, but nobody else did.
But there was a lot of that. We would set something up or we would get something approved to do and then we'd do it and then, I don't know if they were like gauging audience.
Yeah, there was the storyline
reactions.
of the 12 too. There was like a Legends thing, but then that comes full circle with you now working with Rob on Major X, and I don't want to spoil it, but it has some connections to Cable and all that. Like I know the first couple issues are out, but that's like if you're a fan of Cable and a fan of Whilce and Rob's work, that's something you should definitely check out. Whilce, can you kind of talk briefly about Major X and how like you coming back to the X-Men and choosing to do this with Rob? Like I know you have a lot of choices of what you can do in comics. Like what made this something you wanted to do?
Actually, that's a good example of just about almost everything I've talked about. I mean, there's always been a lot of serious talk within the time constraints, but because of that serious crunch, we always, as Art knows, try to make everything light and stuff. But everything really is just on a personal level. You get into the industry, and if you could do the work, if you could brave those deadlines, if you could step up when needed, then that was just a skill set. So everything after that, because that's just hard work, where you don't have no time to think. The rest of it is just personal. So what really happened with Major X for me was that last November, I don't know if you guys know, but in the year 2000, I went into a diabetic coma for a week. I went through 4 bouts of dialysis. I flatlined once. I lost about 40 pounds in that week. When I came out, I couldn't draw. I couldn't draw for 10 years. That's why you guys didn't see me for a while there. So progress, push, relearn. And now I'm at the point where, in my own opinion, I'm better skilled than I used to be before I went into the coma. And so last November, I go, okay, well, I've been doing covers for 2 years now, slowly getting back into the industry. Can I do that monthly grind again? And I swear, that second, literally, Rob called up and said, hey, we got this Major X thing, and you want to do it? It's going to be like the old days, and I'm going to write it. And I go, perfect, because as an artist, especially the kind of artist that the X-Men required at the time, and I am, I'm a detail guy, and I like playing with the visual tools. So I like big, I like energy and action. A lot of times through my career, my 30 years, you get some really good writers who are really skilled, but they're not very visual. So they'll box you in sometimes. Sometimes there's going to be this really great exclamation point of a scene, and the way he's cut it, you have 2 small panels at the last quarter of the last page. And I could do that, it will read, but it will, in my mind, as my artist mind, it won't have that impact. So Rob understands that language because he plays with the same skills, tools that I do.
And so Rob would know to write to your strengths.
Exactly.
Give you those
Right.
spaces.
So when he calls and he says, "Oh, I've got this thing to do. Can you do it? Can you do 1 issue at least?" I go, "Okay. I'm just trying to test my out." And again, like almost everything else, I never really thought about it. And I go, "Okay, yeah, do it." And it was the right choice because I did have a great time again. And part of that was that Rob knew how to write for me, so that I mean, you read, I mean, it's just words, the plot, and then you try to visualize it. And you're trying to as a professional comic book guy, you're trying to not only visualize it, but say, okay, within the 20 pages, which is basically around 4 scenes, can you fit it in there? And most of the time, the really hard work is trying to make everything fit the way you want it to
It's a
fit
big puzzle.
with what the writer wants you to do. The times that you have fun is when you say, okay, I need 4 panels, and you read it, okay, there's 4 panels. And I need 4 panels for this, I need 5 panels for that, I need 2 for this, and then, oh look, page 20, we're done. I don't have to do any shifting around. I don't have to do any editing. I don't have to do any second thinking. You know, those are the fun times because I can just go and go and go. The slow times are, okay, I can do this and then, oh, I need 2 more pages. But in comics, that means a whole slab that then has to be folded up 4 times, and that gets into, I think it's like 8 pages of thing. So I need 2 more, can't have that. You got to have 8 pages, and that's too much money. So I've got to squeeze. Most of comics is squeezing. Most of comics is editing. We're doing brief moments, which is why we love watching animation in the movies, because you guys get beats. You guys get moments. You guys can do the follow through. You can do the sequence. We every now and then will do sequence shots and stuff, but that just eats up time because each sequence, no matter how great, is like maybe 1 or 2 seconds. You know,
We have to do moments. We have to do moments within a scene versus a continual scene.
Yeah. Which is why then I really got into like detail because I love putting in Easter eggs and stuff. Because you really got to be able to read my scene and then go back and look at it and go, oh, look, Rogue is pissed off. Why is she pissed off? She didn't say, oh, she must be, something must have, oh. You know, I try to put a lot of stuff in there so that it just doesn't serve the plot is just action. He pulls a gun out of his pocket, somebody sees him, blocks it, and he picks up another gun. I try to put in, a really good artist will be able to put in a little emotion in between all that, how they're reacting to each other.
It's kind of like,
it's not in the plot.
So it's kind of like music where you have like the bass line, then you have the guitar that's doing something different. You kind of have this is what you're focusing on, but there's still something going on like over here.
Yeah, like the lead guy. I mean,
yeah, like the lead guitar.
He'll run on the melody, but he'll add so much to it.
We have time for one last question before we have to wrap up. If you could raise your hand, like any last question that anybody has. You got one pinned up right here?
Let's see. What is the best looking Cyclops design? One from the X-Men Evolution and the animated series, except one of them is teenager and another one is an adult. And one of them has an X walkie-talkie or X communicator that mostly communicate with Storm, and Cyclops hair is red, dark red from the TAS. In addition to Spider-Man TAS and the comic.
Okay, I'm going to expand on that. What his original question was is which is their favorite Cyclops design from X-Men Evolution and Wolverine X-Men? But I'm going to expand it, because you're all fans of like the First Class era. Like, what is your favorite Cyclops design ever? Movies, TV, animation?
The yellow visor is good too. That one's not bad.
Yeah, go first.
Red.
One
me.
There you go. There you go.
I'll be honest, but I'm sure that I have heard from a lot of fans that they like Cyclops better than Evolution. Most times he didn't quite have to stick up his ass that he has in most of the comics and most of the movies and stuff. So.
Like visually, your Cyclops design there reminded me of my favorite comics one, which is the Walter Simonson X Factor. Like a very clean, like a big X. Like that's. So Art, do you have a favorite Cyclops design? Not necessarily to draw, because I know some can be a pain.
I like the original Kirby.
Oh, the uniforms, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that Cyclops. I liked him better when he didn't have the hair exposed, where he had the full cowl and everything. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was our first goal, was to use those uniforms. We got hit down by Marvel. I said, don't do that. Come up with unique uniforms for the children's center.
Whilce, you've drawn several of them. Like, what's your favorite one to either draw? Yeah, the Walt assignments, and like everyone should go back and look at those. Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for coming. If you could, if you have more questions, you can come back to the floor and visit them at their booths. They will be here a couple more hours today. Thank you very much, everybody.
And I'd like to add, if anybody wants a black and white poster, come by the booth or the table and say, "From the ashes," and you will get a free poster.
It's very limited, so go there now, right after the panel.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 10 left. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there a trash can over there?